And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalia Abrams. I'm the president here at Student Debt Crisis Center. We're happy to be here again with SAG-AFTRA Foundation members to talk about student loan debt and unpacking latest student loan changes, really important upcoming deadlines for some of you, and how we can help you manage your monthly payment and maybe even find some loan forgiveness with the new programs. I'm joined today by my partner and managing director at Student Debt Crisis Center, Sabrina Calazans. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, Natalia. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And actually, I'm gonna toss it off to you to get us started with the workshop.
Perfect. Let's kick things off. All right. So during this workshop, we're going to cover a lot of things, as Natalia said. But some of the main topics that we're covering include the student loan types that exist, different repayment plans, consolidation, and the deadlines associated with that, a couple of updates, and debt relief options. We've been hearing that from so many folks, how to get their debt canceled, what are different ways to pursue that, and we're going to cover that today. I do want to note that we are not financial counselors or attorneys. We are advocates and experts, and we are here to help. And we will have an extensive Q&A period at the end, so we encourage you to hold your questions as we try and cover them, and then to also use the chat function if you do have questions. All right, the first thing that we're going to be discussing today are student loan types and servicers. So this is a very crazy looking chart of the different student loans that exist. There are two main buckets, and those fall within the categories of federal student loans and private loans. Today, we're going to mainly talk about federal loans, which is what we mostly focus on in our work. We understand the hardships that are associated with private loans as well. And so if you do have questions on that, we can provide some resources. But when it comes to federal student loans, there are three major buckets that come with it. There are direct loans, there are Perkins loans, and there are FFELP loans. So I'll start off with Perkins loans first. Those are institutionally held loans. So you might have that loan serviced by someone called Heartland. It is often given out by your institution or held by your institution. Then there are FFELP loans, which are Federal Family Education Loan Program loans. There are two different buckets that fall into this. There are commercially held and Department of Education held. And I know this is a little bit confusing, so I'll explain the difference. Commercially held often refers to a private company or a bank or someone holding this loan that is not the Department of Education. Shortly, we'll discuss where you can look to see what kind of loan you might have and where to go to find that information. But one of the biggest indicators to us is if during the payment pause, we know that between March 2020 and October 2023, there was a payment pause for most borrowers where payments were not mandatory, not required. If you were not required to make payments, then your FFELP loans, if you have these FFELP loans, are held by the Department of Education. If you were required to make payments at that time, then it is a good indicator that you have this commercially held FFELP loan. We are going to get to the topic of consolidation later today, and there is a deadline approaching that you should take action and consolidate by that day. So we'll get to that later, but in terms of FFELP loans, there are subsidized Stafford, unsubsidized Stafford, FFELP Plus, and FFELP consolidation loans. Now, the other big bulk of loans are direct loans. If you have direct loans, usually you do not have to consolidate. You have the correct loan type for most of the programs that exist. There are subsidized, unsubsidized, graduate plus loans, parent plus loans, and direct consolidation loans. All of this information is going to be accessible at studentaid.gov, which we will cover shortly. Now, student loan servicers. Throughout the pandemic and after as well, folks have been at times reaching out to us asking, I have MOHELA or I've been transferred to another servicer. A student loan servicer essentially services your account. They hold all of the information, you make your payment to the servicer. This is really important to know. If you ever have questions or you want to reach out directly about your loans, you would contact your servicer. So some of the federal ones include MOHELA, Nelnet, Ed Financial, Aidvantage, those are the bigger ones. And then there are private student loan servicers, which service the private loans or the commercially held FFELP loans. So something like Discover or Navient, Wells Fargo, Sallie Mae, and SoFi, those are indicators that you have private loans. And that is outside of what we are going to be discussing today. And as I mentioned, studentaid.gov is one of the best resources that you can use to find all of this information, whether it's your loan type, whether it's your balance, when your payment is due, all of this information. So the next slide here is what it looks like when you're going to log in. We encourage folks to type this into their browser because oftentimes you can do a quick Google search and sometimes it's not the accurate link, or folks click on something else that looks like it. And so we don't want anyone to click on a scam or something that is trying to mimic the actual website. So this is what you should see once you click on studentaid.gov. And once you get there and you log in, you should be taken to your dashboard. But if you get lost along the way, that is totally fine. I tell folks to look for their name in the top right-hand corner, and you can click on that, and then it should have the option to dashboard. And then you'll click on view details, which is, there's a big arrow pointing right to it, but you'll click on that, and that will essentially show you a few more details about your loan, specifically the balance on the multiple loans, things like that. But if you also look on the right-hand side, you can see when your payment is due, who your servicer is. If it says Department of Ed in front, it means it is a direct loan. It is held by the Department of Education, which is a good sign. Right. So once you click on the view details, this is what you're going to see. It's going to have a breakdown of your balance. You'll see the principal versus the interest here. You can click on that and see a lot more, or you can just scroll down and you'll see the specific breakdown of the types of loans you have. In this case, there are Perkins loans, or there were Perkins loans. You see that there's a $0 balance there. However, if you have something that says Perkins loans, or you have the FFELP loans listed with a balance, there's a good chance that you may need to consolidate those, just as an FYI. So that is where you can go to access your loan types and figure out what your next steps look like. Now we're going to cover some of our student loan repayment options that are out there. All right, one of the really important things to cover is something called the on-ramp program. So as most folks know, payments resumed in October of 2023. However, we know that for some people, they cannot afford their payments, they cannot make their payment. And so the president had announced this program, this on-ramp program, essentially that is a 12-month automatic program. There's no application needed, that if you miss a payment or you don't make a payment, you are not going to fall into the threat of defaulting, which has serious consequences. And so there are pros and cons to this, it's worth noting. So again, it protects you from default status. And if you miss a payment, you're not supposed to be reported to collection agencies or credit bureaus. So that is something that is protective for a lot of borrowers. Although one thing to note is that interest will continue to accrue if you do not make your monthly payment. And if you're working towards public service loan forgiveness or IDR, income-driven repayment forgiveness, you will not receive credits for the months that you do not make a payment. So that is just really important information if you're working towards one of those programs. All right, so federal repayment plans. Today, we're gonna mostly focus on the SAFE plan. We're gonna cover a few of the other ones, but this is really important to know. I'll start off with the standard plan. When someone enters into repayment, they're automatically placed in the standard plan. The standard plan is a 10-year plan for folks, and your payments are fixed. They do not change. They're based on your balance, and you would make these payments for the 10 years before they are paid off. There are these alternative plans, which I'm not going to get into, but these are older and very less commonly known. And then there are these IDR plans, income-driven plans. We're going to discuss SAVE today in depth, but there's a saving on a valuable education, there's pay, there's IBR, income-based repayment, there's ICR, income contingent repayment, and there's ISR, income-sensitive repayment. These are all different programs. There's different qualifications for different ones. They look at different percentages of your income, but they are based on your income and family size overall. That is the general understanding of an IDR plan. And the repayment length is dependent on whether you have undergraduate debt or graduate debt. So that'll be 20 or 25 years. As I said, some of the benefits of the IDR plans is that because it is extended out, they're extending it to 20 to 25 years, which is one of the cons here, your payment can actually be lower. So if you have a larger family size, or let's say you're not working, you're making $0, or you're making a lower income, your payment could potentially be as low as $0. So that can definitely be helpful to prevent delinquency and default for folks who are concerned with making their monthly payment. When you apply for an IDR plan at studentaid.gov, it will lock in that payment for 12 months. So let's say you're not working and you're making $0, so you lock in a $0 payment. Even if you find employment within the next 3 months, it will remain at $0 for the remainder of the 12 months, and then it will need to be recertified and will change accordingly. As I mentioned, it's calculated as a percentage of discretionary income based on income and family size, not your loan balance. So for folks who might have a larger balance, this is very helpful in making sure that you have a lower payment. And as I said, lower incomes, or maybe if you lost a job or have decreased income, this is really helpful as well. And here's just a visual of the IDR plans. If you look from left to right, it goes from most generous to least generous. The SAVE plan, which we're going to cover shortly, used to be Repay. So if you were enrolled in Repay, you were automatically transitioned into the SAVE plan. Pay as you earn is going to phase out in 2025. So if you're currently enrolled in Pay, you will be able to remain in the program. You just won't be able to sign up for it after it's been phased out. Then there's IBR and then ICR. ICR is tends to be, unless you're looking at this other more complex process, it is the only other ICR or IDR plan available for Parent Plus loans. Parent Plus loans, unfortunately, have more limited options. So it's just worth noting that if you do want to enroll your loans or you only have one Parent Plus loan in an IDR plan, ICR is the best option for you. All right, so looking at the SAVE plan, this is something that the president has been talking a lot about. We've seen this in the headlines for several months now, and it's really worth noting. So what qualifies for SAVE? These direct loans, as I mentioned, so direct undergraduate or graduate loans are eligible for the SAVE plan, as well as direct consolidation loans. If you have FFELP loans or Perkins loans, you can consolidate them into the direct loan program. So it'll become a direct consolidation loan, and they would then become eligible to be enrolled in the SAVE plan. Now, Parent Plus loans are not eligible for the SAVE plan. However, there is a very complex double consolidation process that folks can engage in to enroll their loans in this plan. It is essentially a workaround using multiple applications and multiple processes to be able to enroll your loans in that plan. You can reach out to us and we can provide those resources to you. However, it is very complex, but it might be really helpful for folks looking to lower their monthly payment. And if you have at least one Parent Plus loan and another loan. Another really positive thing with the SAVE plan is that they have this opt-in automatic recertification. So essentially, by opting in, you would allow the IRS and the Department of Education to connect with one another. So they would see what your income is, and then that annual recertification, you wouldn't have to call your servicer and say, my income has changed. I want to recertify that, and I want my payment to be changed. This will automatically happen for you. You do not have to call every 12 months, because for the other plans, SAVE is the only one that currently has this. For the other plans, if you miss recertifying, if you don't call your servicer before the 12 months are over, you can see a capitalizing event. And that is something that allows folks balances to balloon and grow out of control. And that is very scary for many borrowers. There are pros and cons to this. If you have a steady income, doesn't change, it may be best to opt in. However, if you do a lot of gig work or your income changes throughout the year, or there might be a season where you don't, you're unemployed or you only work a specific time of the year, you might want to consider opting out. And then when you're not working, you can call your servicer, let them know that you're making $0 or you're making a low income. So then you can lock in a low payment for 12 months and so on and so forth. And then that is the best way to proceed. All right, so let's look at the different SAVE plan portions that are currently in effect now. So if you are a single borrower and you make $15 an hour or less, which amounts to about $30,000 a year, you have a monthly payment of $0. And a family of 4 making less than $60,000 will also have a monthly payment of 0. Under the SAVE plan, there is this unpaid monthly interest that will be waived as long as you meet your monthly payment. So if your monthly payment is $15, but you have $40 of interest that is being added on, this is essentially being subsidized. If you make the $15 payment, the $40 is not supposed to be accumulating on your account. However, I do want to note that the Department of Education has made it clear to us that they will retroactively remove that interest. So we're hearing from folks who are concerned. I went into my own account. I'm enrolled in the SAVE plan, and right now it's showing that the interest is accruing. However, we don't have a timeline, but the Department of Education will retroactively remove that interest at some point in time. And then a really important piece that we recently saw the president announce is that for folks who have a lower balance, if you originally borrowed less than $12,000 and you've been in repayment for at least 10 years, you will start to receive notice that your debt will be canceled. This is on a sliding scale, so it doesn't just have to be 12,000. If you have 12,500, that'll be 11 years of payments. If you have 13,000, that'll be an additional year. So it's on a sliding scale up to a certain point, and it is based on your original balance borrowed and the total loan balance, not the individual loan. So it's 12,000 as a whole versus 12,000 as a singular loan and a few other loans. And later this summer, there are going to be other provisions kicking in. If you only have undergraduate loans, you will see your payments cut in half because they will be taking a look at 10% of your discretionary income to 5%. And if you have a mixture of undergrad and grad loans, you're going to see a weighted average of between 5 and 10% of your income, and that is based on the original principal balance of your loans. All right, with that, I'm going to toss it over to Natalia to take over the next portion. Natalia?
Thank you, Sabrina. And we know this is a lot. Sabrina will share our email in the chat. We are definitely here to help you sort through this. A lot of folks we know go back and watch these workshops to, really unpack the information. I encourage you to ask questions in the chat. I know there are a few folks here. And, just a quick question, and I guess you can say yes in the chat if you're listening. I'd love to know if folks have loans that are, 10, 15, 20 years, 10 years or older, 20 years or older, 25. There's some really great programs for folks that have these older loans, as long as you make sure you're in the right loan program or consolidate. So we're going to go over federal loan consolidation, and this is incredibly helpful right now because there is a deadline where you will be able to keep your credits if you're in an income-driven repayment program or if you're working towards public service loan forgiveness, even if you switch into loan types. Also, you'll be considered for this one-time income-driven account adjustment. But to put it in layman's terms, a one-time opportunity for borrowers who have older loans, say 20 or 25 years, to have all of it erased. You may have seen in the headlines, as Sabrina mentioned, we're hearing about the SAVE program, but we're also hearing about borrowers get all of their loans erased that have been in the system for 20 or 25 years due to this account adjustment. There will be ongoing adjustments until July 1st. So there's still time to take advantage of this. And that's why we want to walk through this kind of wonky process of consolidation. So despite the name, it's more about converting an older loan into a newer direct loan. You're creating a new loan and will receive a new payoff date. Now, this could say 10 or 20 years from now. But if you've already been in borrowing for 20 years, feel free to call us. We can walk you through this. But my guess is that you will be very close to a payoff date, even if when you create your new loan form, it seems like you're signing up for 10 or 20 more years, which is not what's going to be happening. This can take 30 to 60 days. You need to fill out and send in your paperwork by April 30th of this year of 2024. You do not have to have the 30 to 60 day completion time, but all of your paperwork has to be signed and submitted. The requirements are a single FFELP, that's a federal family education loan, or consolidation, or FFLP consolidated loan. Into a direct loan, you can benefit for public service loan forgiveness. If you are consolidating an existing direct loan, you must have at least another loan you're combining it with. Have a federal loan, including health professional student loans, NSL, HEAL, and more. Those are older student loans. But for folks that have these older FFEL loans, especially the ones that are commercially held, Sabrina talked about that earlier. So if you were making mandatory payments during the COVID pandemic payment pause, that wasn't you, you probably have a commercial loan and you will want to consolidate before April 30th of 2024 of this year, so you can take full advantage of what I'm talking about. So advantages are you get one bill, you take all your loans into one loan, it weights your interest rates, you get one interest rate. You then get access to the SAVE program and all of the more generous repayment programs that are now out there, including public service loan forgiveness. If you work for the foundation, if you work at a nonprofit, we've actually talked with a few of your members and they also run and work at nonprofits. So there's a crossover and a synergy between those two. So if you're earning credits there, and we'll talk about that, you also have access to public service loan forgiveness and IDR account adjustment forgiveness. So you may have a longer repayment period, but not if you're eligible for this forgiveness, but it does create a new loan with a new repayment period. It will capitalize interest. Any unpaid interest will be accrued and added to principal. After April, the rules are going to be stricter on how they'll treat older loans in terms of keeping credits, past credits if you were on an IDR program. We're still fully untangling this on our end, so I don't want to give misinformation. I would just say that last time we spoke to you, this deadline was actually supposed to be at the end of last year. We advocates got it extended until April 30th. I don't foresee another extension. And what we are being told is that this is the safest time to consolidate and not affect and fully restart, especially for those with older loans. So let's take a look at what this looks like. If you have a direct loan and a graduate loan, you can consolidate into a direct consolidation loan. If you have a combination of FELP and Perkins and Parent Plus, which we know a lot of you do, again, a direct consolidation loan. You'll have a direct unsubsidized. The one thing you'll see here is that unsubsidized loans have to go into one loan, and then a subsidized loan would go into a separate loan. It will look like you have two loans. We have had supporters and borrowers call us and say, you said we'd have one loan, but we have two. It is treated essentially as one loan by the Department of Education, but there is just no way to combine the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. But we always want to point stuff out because when you're going through the process yourself, you want it to look exactly like we're explaining it to you. So you go to studentaid.gov. Sabrina did a great job going through what that's like. Go to loan repayment and consolidate loans. You can fill out all of this information online. If you don't want to do it online, there is a paper form that you can print and submit. I will say the online forms are much easier and fill in the blanks for you with information you may not recall from the past. So let's do a quick step-by-step on the online application. It's a few things. You're going to log in to studentaid.gov. You're going to want to click Consolidate Loans under the loan repayment and apply now. Then you're going to review the application breakdown and checklist and continue. And with this, it will fill in once you go through all of the different steps. It will fill in the loan types, the information, the loan codes. These are things that can trip people up on the paper application, but as long as you're logging in through studentaid.gov, it's with your FAFSA pins, but many student loan borrowers are very familiar with studentaid.gov. This is to know it's quite simple. It shouldn't take too long, and we are here to help at Student Debt Crisis Center. So now I'm going to talk about these adjustments, or as I said, these opportunities for borrowers who have been in the system 20, 25 years to see all of their debt erased. So this is a one-time account adjustment. This applies to people with federal student loans, any months in a repayment status, regardless of the payment type or loan type or repayment plan. 12, if you have had 12 or more months of consecutive forbearance, or 36 or more months of cumulative forbearance, this is for you. Months spent in economic hardship or military deferment after 2013, months spent in any deferment with the exception of in school prior to 2013. This is definitely for borrowers who have been, we talked to a lot of folks that, went to school in the 80s or 90s. This is definitely something for you. Anytime in repayment on earlier loans prior to consolidation of these loans into a consolidated loan. Again, it's a mouthful. You don't have to do anything. The only thing you have to make sure is that you have an education loan, which is all of the direct loan program, and there are education held older FFELP loans. If you're already in that category, you don't have to do anything. This will be automatic. Some folks, or many folks, have already been told. To date, President Biden has canceled almost $140 billion, and a lot of that has been through these income-driven forgiveness account adjustments and public service loan forgiveness. So to break this down a little more, borrowers who have reached 240 or 300 months, 20 or 25 years worth of payments in IDR forgiveness, or 120 months in public service loan forgiveness, 10 years, started to see their loans canceled last year. This is still ongoing. If you have a commercially held FFEL, Perkins, or HEAL loan, you must consolidate by April 30th, 2024. I know I'm a broken record, but it's really important you remember this because it's coming up very shortly. All other borrowers will begin to see their accounts updated through the end of, through July is what we're hearing. There was just a recent tranche a couple weeks ago that was canceled. So this is an example. You have Diane, administrative assistant at a private firm. She has a commercially held FFEL loan. So right now, the Department of Education doesn't know that the income-driven repayment account adjustment should be applied to her. Essentially, Diane doesn't exist for this reward or benefit until she consolidates into a direct loan. And she has a loan balance of $65,000, started payments in 2004. Once she consolidates, because she has been in repayment for 20 years or more and fits the other criteria, the loan is completely gone and is tax-free. You will not be taxed on the amount canceled or forgiven until 2025 and potentially never again. But you, at this point, with the current adjustments, you will not be taxed. You will not see an income tax bill. So now we're going to quickly go through public service loan forgiveness. We know some of you folks work at the foundation or, as I mentioned, work for a nonprofit. This program started October 1st, 2007. We always mention that because any time worked prior to 2007, while we thank you so much for your service, unfortunately doesn't count. The program only began in 2007. And so the time after that. You need to work for 10 years or 120 months in a public service job, 30 hours or more per week. Payments can be cumulative, not consecutive. We know people go in and out of nonprofit work. So it's all full-time or 30-hour per week work that will count at a 501c3 nonprofit. And all remaining debt is tax-free. So you need to make sure you have a direct loan. or consolidate to a direct loan. Another reason you would want to consolidate right now. Make sure you have a qualifying employer. Make sure you're in a qualifying repayment plan. The standard plan counts, the SAVE plan counts, the IDR, income-driven repayment plans count. Document your employer using the public service loan form or employer certification form. And after applying, after 120 qualifying payments, you have your debt forgiven and tax-free. This is 501c3 nonprofits, any state, government, local work. What we generally think is public service. You can always check with us to see if your place qualifies. So one of the best things to do is combine an income-driven repayment plan, SAVE, for example, at a $0 payment, with doing public service work for 10 years, and you will maximize your benefit. You could feasibly pay $0 for all 10 years on the right income-driven repayment plan and have all of your student loan debt forgiven. This is, if you're listening now, if you know somebody about to go to college, it's a reason to go into public service. It definitely helps offset the lower salaries that a lot of people receive in public service, with being able to go to good schools and unfortunately to have to take on student debt. So there's an account adjustment for this. It is very similar to income-driven repayment. It is about being, if you were in 12 or more months of consecutive forbearance or 36 more months of cumulative forbearance, this is when you called your loan servicer and said, I don't know what to do, I can't make payments, and they just would put you in a forbearance period. And this would happen over and over and over again. Your loan would compound and capitalize. And that's why you saw maybe a relatively manageable number grow to a number you don't feel you can manage. This is the government trying to rectify that happening for so many years and so many decades to student loan borrowers. So we see this with the public service loan forgiveness adjustment. Again, this will all happen automatically. You don't have to memorize what's on this slide. Just know that if you have been doing 10 years, if you have done 10 years or more for public service, or if you've been just generally borrowing for 20 or 25 years, you should receive some credit. I think they think the average amount of time is 3 years that people are seeing shaved off their overall 10-year or repayment, and then many borrowers are seeing the full amount erased. All right. Lastly, if you were in default prior to the pandemic and then payments went on pause, there is a program that will streamline helping you get out of default. This does not include the Perkins or school-held loans that went into default after, or any of loans that went into default after the pandemic pause. But you need to, this expires in October, and you'll have to take additional steps to get in the Fresh Start program, but it will allow you to reaccess your federal aid. It will stop the collection process. It will allow you to be eligible for other loans and get into repayment programs and restore and rehabilitate loans. You'll need to go online to myeddebt.ed.gov and log in. And there's a mail-in option, there's a call-in option that you basically are telling them that you want to use Fresh Start to bring your loans back into good standing. Again, this is for people that have fallen into default prior to the pandemic. Technically, right now, there are not new defaults because of this on-ramp period, which also ends at the end of October. But this is for if you were not in good standing prior to that. All right, we always want to tell you, Sabrina alluded to this earlier, there are a lot of debt relief scams out there. You may have received calls, snail mail, social media telling you that you could have your debt forgiven tomorrow. And that might be true, and it hopefully is, but you should not have to pay anyone, exorbitant fees or even small fees to achieve all of these free federal programs, completely free of charge. So just be careful. I see that we have deadlines approaching there. We are telling you about a deadline. That's a deadline with the Department of Education. We are also giving you a .gov address. There is a company that we work with, a third-party company, but through an agreement and a grants agreement, they do not charge because we believe student loan borrowers are already struggling to make their payments. You don't need to pay a third party to help you with your student loan debt. If you run into trouble and feel that you have been wronged by your loan servicer, that something, just generally going wrong, you can reach out to the student loan ombudsperson. They resolve discrepancies with your loan balance and payment. They explain loan interest and collection charges, identify options for resolving your issues related to consolidation, service quality, default status, bankruptcy, income tax refund, offsets, and other concerns. Here, you can contact Bonnie Littrell at FSA Ombudsman Office at ed.gov. And I feel Sabrina will share that in the chat as well. And lastly, I mentioned this third-party company that we do work with. This was a company started by advocates who had worked in the student debt space with myself about a decade ago. And we have worked with Savvy for 3 or 4 years now. Very much recommend. We understand that everything we've talked about can be very lengthy, dense. It's tough to remember what plan is right for you. That's what's really great about the Savvy tool is that it's like a TurboTax for your student loans. You can sync all of your information. They will tell you if you have that type of loan that needs to consolidate. I will say they don't do the consolidation paperwork. That is best done at studentaid.gov. But if you need help signing in or registering for a repayment program, seeing which one is right for you, which will have the quickest payoff date, using the Savvy tool is great. Even if you don't use them to finalize your paperwork, just using the tool we have found works better right now than a lot of the other tools and aids out there. And I believe Sabrina will share that link in the chat as well. And then this is just a list of resources. I know that links have been shared. We can share this afterwards. And with that, we are here to take your questions, or I'm here to take your questions with Sabrina.
Okay, one question that I did see in the chat that I was not able to answer is that for the folks who have older loans, such as a FFELP loan, in this case, Megan went into her studentaid.gov account and she's not seeing it listed there. What would you suggest for folks with older loans who might not see that currently listed at studentaid.gov?
So they're not seeing it listed at studentaid.gov.
Correct. It says here that she has a FFEL loan, but has not seen that appear on her studentaid.gov account.
Okay. I need more information. It's possible that it's a private loan, and then it's possible that for some reason it's not there, but it's on NSLDS, and we would want to call to verify information. There are some of these older loans I know that don't show up in the way they should show up. So if that person could reach out to us.
I'll drop our...
And then this would be another great plug just to use the Savvy tool because they're able to kind of look under the hood more so than we are.
One thing that I think is really important is talking about Fresh Start. I can talk through that a little bit, Natalia, and feel free to jump in. But essentially, when folks fall into default is what happens. First, they'll enter into delinquency, and then there's default. So after not making payments for 270 days, what can happen is someone falls into default. And what that looks like is that folks can experience wage garnishments. Folks might have their Social Security garnished or their tax returns withheld. So this is something that happens to folks. It is very frustrating. It is heartbreaking to hear how folks are impacted by this. And so Fresh Start, there are multiple ways that folks can go about enrolling. You can do so online. I can drop that link here one more time. And Folks can do that. And then once you call and you are enrolled in Fresh Start or you go through the process of Fresh Start, you can then enroll in a plan such as the Save plan and potentially lock in a $0 payment or a very low monthly payment so that you can be prevented from falling into default again. Oftentimes, folks don't know about these IDR plans. They don't know that they even exist. And so it's really important for us to spread the word, especially if it can help to prevent folks from falling into default. So I will definitely drop that link here in the chat for folks. Another question I'm seeing here is if your loan isn't due for payment yet, with graduation being this June, should I or can I still apply for an IDR plan or save? Do you want to take that one, Natalia?
Yeah, so you won't need to apply for a repayment plan for 6 months. You'll go into an automatic in-school deferment, or I'm sorry, you'll go into it out of school because you're graduating, but you'll have deferment for 6 months. And at any point in time after you graduate, you can enroll in a repayment program. If you're making $0, you pay $0 because it's based on your income. You know, it's something we always want to remind folks that, you know, do gig work, are in and out of jobs, often on seasons, as Sabrina mentioned. So I would wait, but till after you graduate, because right now your loans are in school deferred. So you would not want to enroll in a repayment plan. But once you graduate within that first 6 months, please, please do.
Natalia, anything else that folks should know? I know that that April 30th deadline is really important. So maybe a final reminder of what that is.
Yes, and that is for anyone who hasn't already. I think I saw somebody in the chat that said they had, who hasn't already consolidated, especially if you have an older loan where you were making payments during the pandemic because you had to, and you haven't consolidated your loan yet. It will allow you to enroll in the most generous repayment programs such as Save, but it will also make you eligible for this one-time income-driven repayment account adjustment. And there is still time to be a part of that until July 1st. So make sure to check your loan status and consolidate your loan if you need to before April 30th of this year.
Awesome. I'm seeing a question here about Parent Plus loans. So can Parent Plus loans be forgiven?
I think on the one-time account adjustment, I need to look into that. Do you know offhand, Sabrina?
I'm sorry, but what was that, Natalia? I'm sorry.
Just on if it's part of the adjustment.
Parent Plus loans are part of the adjustment. They are. Yep.
So in that way, there are some complicated, as Sabrina alluded to, there's this double consolidation process for Parent Plus loans to go into the SAVE program. But they, at this point, can't be forgiven unless you go through a public service loan forgiveness track or the income-driven repayment tracks. We're definitely here. A reminder to email us if you have any questions.
Yes, I'm dropping in our email here. It's info@studentdebtcrisis.org. You can also go to our website at studentdebtcrisis. Wait, let me make sure I got it correct. I just blanked. studentdebtcrisis.org. There is a contact form there. You can also send us a message that way and find other resources linked. You can also find us on YouTube. We have recordings of previous workshops where we go more in depth. So please feel free to visit that. And then I'm not sure, but there may be a recording of this that is circulated to you folks. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Yes, and thank you to Rochelle and Anne and everyone at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation team. It's always a pleasure to work with you all. And have a great evening.